Hey guys, Raider here. Hope you're all doing great and having a fantastic day. In today's video, we're going to tackle the question, is Full HD, is 1080p enough resolution for the Samsung Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 15.6-inch model? This also applies to last year's Galaxy Book Pro 360 model. And I'll tell you right up front, it's kind of a mixed bag. It really depends on you and a few factors that we're going to talk about. So right up front, I do want to tell you, if you're interested in getting the 13.3-inch version, that has a 166 ppi, pixel per inch density. No problems. You have no problems with 1080p on that size of screen. You're not going to be able to even really tell the difference at all going from 1080p to 4K due to limiting factors of the human eye. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So if you're interested in the 13.3-inch version, you're good. Don't even worry about it. 1080p on 13.3, mwah, butter. That's perfect. Great battery life. You're going to get all the benefits of having that lower res screen in regards to that. You know, getting the better battery life, the lower weight, all those factors. So if you're considering the smaller model, go ahead and exit this video. Feel free to purchase it without even having to worry about the resolution. It's totally fine. However, we're here to talk about the 15.6-inch version. This comes in at a significantly lower PPI of 141. Now, what am I talking about when I refer to PPI? So that's pixels per inch. So per square inch on your screen, you're going to have a number of pixels. Now, naturally, the higher the number of the pixels, the more closer they are in together, right? And the less chance that your human eye is able to actually see the individual pixels. That's what we want. The higher the number, the better. However, we do have a limiting factor, and that is the ability of our eyes. Let's take a quick look at this picture here that kind of shows the difference in PPI between a 1080p screen and 4K. You can see that the pixels are a little bit scrunched together, a little tighter on the 4K. It's going to give you a sharper image, right? But let's look at another statistic here, and you'll find this in a lot of vision type magazines. I happen to be nearsighted, so I do stay up to date on this stuff. And you'll also find this a lot when you read periodicals that discuss display technologies. And there's a rule out there, and the rule is this. Once you get to 2 to 3 feet away from your eyeballs to the actual display, it is very difficult for you to recognize a PPI above 150. So let's say, for example, this screen had a 200 PPI, right? And if I go from 3 feet out here to 4 feet, out here to 5 feet, my eyes are not going to be able to see that difference. I'm only going to be able to see that difference when that PPI is lower than 150. And here's the kicker. This PPI comes in at 141, so it's right on the threshold. So I had my fiance measure the distance from the laptop screen to my eyeballs, and for me personally, at a comfortable distance, I'm exactly 2 feet, 2 inches away from the screen. So I'm right within that threshold of being able to see the pixels and not being able to see them. Now, I can tell you from my own personal experience of having this since launch and having last year's model for over a year now, I can't see the pixels individually this far away. This is about 2 feet away. However, I can start to see them if I get up to about 10 to 12 inches. If I put my face that close to the screen. And where that makes a difference is for those of you that have perfect vision or even better than perfect vision, you're going to notice the pixels at an even further distance. And what I'm getting at is if you have great eyesight, like you've always had 20/20 your entire life, 1080p is going to be very questionable for you. You're going to be right on the cusp because you're at that breaking point of having perfect vision and being within that 2 to 3 feet range of being at that 150 PPI mark, at which point we can start to differentiate between being able to see the pixels and not, and having them blend in together. But to bring some light to this and to see if this is going to work for you, right? Because for me it works, for you it may not. I'm going to put some pics on the screen here. First, I want to show you my monitor that I typically work with. So this is my 32-inch 1440p monitor, and I measured the distance from my eyeballs to it, and I'm just over 3 feet. I'm about 10 to 11 inches further away from my monitor screen than what I use my Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 at. However, the PPI difference, right? So 32-inch 1440p, the PPI on my monitor, which I like a lot, I have zero complaints about the resolution, is 92. It's a 92 pixel per inch panel. The pixel per inch on here is 141. And the viewing distance between the two monitors is about that much where my eyeballs are. So which of the screens actually looks sharper to me? The 1080p one here on my Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 or my gaming monitor, my 1440p? I'll go with the Galaxy Book2 Pro 360. I think at the viewing distance that I keep it at, the screen looks just a tad bit sharper than on my main gaming monitor. And it's a great looking monitor. Another thing to keep in mind too, some other PPIs I don't want to throw out here because that is the important metric, right? It's that pixels per inch. That's what differentiates between us seeing the pixels and not. A 24-inch 1080p monitor, which is a very common purchase. It is the #1 selling size and resolution monitor on the market worldwide. That has a 92 PPI. All right, so you're using a monitor that has about 50 less pixels per inch than the Galaxy Book2 Pro 360. Granted, that 24-inch monitor you'll probably keep a little bit further away than this laptop, but not much. Most people keep their 24-inch monitors still fairly close. Another one, 27 inches at 1440p. A great monitor for gamers, right? This is a nice preferred setup. You're looking at 108 PPI. Where we start to get past that 150 PPI difference though, is if you get a 27-inch 4K monitor, that'll get you up to 163 PPI. And to just add a little bit of contrast, the #1 selling size TV right now as far as large screen TVs go in the US is 65-inch 4K panels. All right, a 65-inch 4K TV has a 67 PPI. So it's roughly about, I don't want to say quite 1/3, but a little over 1/3 of the PPI, the pixel density, of what you get on the Galaxy Book2 Pro 360. So if you were to stand a foot away from your 4K television, you are going to see the pixels. Definitely a lot more than you would on the Galaxy Book2 Pro 360 due to the higher pixel density here on this smaller screen. So as the screen gets smaller, that resolution becomes less of a factor. Now, having said all this, what do I prefer on a laptop? 1080p or 4K? I'll tell you straight up, I prefer 4K. 4K gives you more scalability, right? We'll touch on scaling here in just a little bit. It's just gonna have a little bit clearer text. Not mind-blowing, but you will see the difference, especially on a 15-inch panel, 15.6-inch like this. And the image presentation itself is just gonna look a little bit more vibrant. But let's keep this in mind. This screen has something in its favor that most panels don't have. You have an infinite to 1 contrast ratio. So basically 1,000,000 to 1, also expressed as infinite, right? Infinity. That contrast ratio gives you perfect blacks that stand out a lot more than what you're going to see on a typical LCD, TFT, IPS, VA type panel, right? This is Super AMOLED. Another thing to consider too is that although this is 1080p, this has a digitizer layer on it that you can barely see. That's a great thing about Samsung panels is that they sandwich their digitizer layer between the panels, which you don't typically get on most. Like HP's, that digitizer layer is right on the front of it. So even on the 4K panel, you're able to see the little tiny lines from that digitizer layer, which you're not going to see on this 1080p panel. And in some respects, it almost makes those 4K panels look like they have less resolution for when you're wanting to use pen input. This laptop does come with the S Pen, and the S Pen performance on here is incredible. It is fantastic. And you're not going to get a better looking digitizer layer on any other laptop there is. Next, I want to talk about why did Samsung choose 1080p over a higher resolution, like let's say QHD, which is very rarely used in laptops, and UHD, 4K? Well, there's a lot of reasons. And the main reason being, though, is that they designed this laptop to be super lightweight, super portable, and with all-day battery life. Those are 3 things that do not go well with 4K displays. Remember, even though 4K displays have come a long ways, even the OLED panels, they are still battery hungry. They are still GPU hungry. Keep in mind, this has integrated graphics. When you're wanting to start pushing 4K, you're almost inclined to have to switch to a dedicated GPU, right? You're pushing 4 times as many pixels. It sucks up more battery. You're gonna have to have a heavier machine. Then you're losing that ultra lightweight, ultra portable, all day long battery life. And that's what this is geared for. I mentioned we were gonna talk about scaling. So scaling is a very important factor when considering resolutions, right? So scaling, or Windows scaling in particular, is the ability to increase or decrease the size of your icons and text. And this applies to everything, your applications, your desktop, your icons, your start menu, and all that. So what a lot of people don't realize is that out of the gate, this machine can be scaled down to even shrink a little smaller, giving you more stuff on here. It comes set at 125%. Let me show you what you can set this to. So if we go to display settings, you'll see here we have the 125% recommended. So you can make this even smaller to mimic more like what you're going to see on a 4K display. Here you go, everything just shrunk up. And if we go ahead and minimize this, this represents the typical size of icons and text that most people are going to scale their 4K resolutions up to. Remember, 4K is going to even look 4 times smaller than this at its default 100%. Most people scale up to 250 to 300% to bring this right back up to what you see right now. You can get this scaled down enough to where the text is small enough to get the same number of UI elements to a degree that you're going to get on a 4K display. You just have to tweak the settings a little bit. So in conclusion, do I think 1080p is enough for this particular machine? 15.6 inches with it being a Super AMOLED panel. The answer, I think, for most of you, in most cases, is going to be a yes. I think you're going to have a real hard time at that 2 to 3 foot viewing distance differentiating the pixels. You'll have a hard time nitpicking it. It'll be fine to read the text, everything's going to look fine. However, if you have exceptional eyesight and or you tend to bring your laptop in a lot closer to you, to where your viewing distance is less than 2 feet away, I think you should look for something else. I think you should consider getting a higher resolution panel. There's one other consideration too. If you work with photos and video editing at a professional level, you might also want to consider a 4K display. Right? You're going to get that extra resolution that you need to make those detailed fine-tuned touch-ups. That's going to be a little more difficult to do on a 1080p screen. However, for the majority of you, those of you that want to enjoy media, do your day-to-day emails, surfing the web, all your normal tasks, going from class to class, I think 1080p on a 15.6 inch is totally fine. Do keep in mind, this is the normal resolution for most laptops. So if you go into a Best Buy right now or a Walmart right now, 9 out of 10 machines you hop on are going to be 1080p. And do keep this in mind as well. If you haven't had the pleasure of seeing one of these particular screens in person, the Super AMOLED panel on this particular laptop, you're missing out. This does not compare with a standard LCD like, IPS VA type panels, any of these type of panels. This is in a league of its own as far as the image quality goes, the contrast goes, the color accuracy goes. Really, really tough to beat. And don't forget the embedded digitizer layer for the S Pen. So I think Samsung made a fine move. I would really like to see the option though next year for us to get a bump up, right? I know most of these manufacturers are skipping 1440p, but if we can get a 4K option and take that hit in battery life, I'd definitely be willing to consider it. So I didn't definitively answer the question for you because it really is going to be based on your eyesight and how far away you keep the device from you. Again, that threshold is 2 to 3 feet away, and it's going to make more of a difference if you have real keen eyesight. You guys are the ones that are going to be able to spot out those pixels. All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching.